Okay. Hey everyone, afternoon. Thanks for joining us. We were just giving everyone a minute or two to jump on. But let's get going. I'm sure the stragglers will join us soon. So my name is Jared van Zaydem. I work at Strove. My background is in sports and exercise medicine, and I'm passionate about helping people take control of their health through preventative medicine and technology. So wearables, like the one you see on this slide, have become an integral part of how we approach fitness and well-being. But with the flood of data they provide, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Today, we're going to cut through that noise and try and focus on what truly matters, the metrics that can help you make smarter, data-driven decisions for your health. So here's a quick look at what we'll cover today. We'll start by exploring why wearables matter, not just as fancy gadgets, but as tools that can really transform and affect our health. Then we'll talk about the problem with wearable data. Send a quick thumbs up in the chat if you've ever felt a little confused by your wearables data. Next, we'll dive into the metrics that truly matter. So those are the ones you should focus on for actionable insights by giving you a framework to choose the right ones. I'll also give some quick tips on choosing the right wearable for you. And then we'll have a look at where the wearable market in general is going in the future. Finally, we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. And so please just post any questions you might have in the comments or in the Q&A section. Let's get started. In 2019, Stephen Luemba, a young interior designer in London, treated himself to an Apple Watch, just another gadget to track his steps and get some notifications. But in 2020, something pretty extraordinary happened. His watch sent him a notification, irregular heart rhythm detected. At first, Stephen ignored it. He was feeling perfectly healthy. But when the alerts persisted over the next few days, he saw a doctor. And that decision changed his life. Well, saved his life. The tests revealed atrial fibrillation, which is a condition that could have led to a stroke if he'd left it untreated. Stephen was shocked, obviously. He was in his late 20s, he was fit, and he was otherwise healthy. But the culprit turned out to be stress from his demanding job. Stephen underwent treatment, changed his lifestyle, and today he's thriving, all thanks to his wearable. This shows us the incredible potential of wearables, not just as fitness gadgets, but as life-saving tools. And the key to unlocking that potential is understanding the metrics that matter. Wearables have taken the health and wellness world by storm. They're everywhere, tracking everything from heart rate to VO2 max to sleep stages. But here's the issue. Too much data can be overwhelming. Have you ever scrolled through your wearables dashboard and thought, what does any of this actually mean? Good luck trying to figure out what that Apple Watch is trying to tell you. And in some cases, wearables can even make things worse. Take orthosomnia, for example. It's a condition where worrying about your wearable reported sleep quality actually disrupts your sleep. So imagine trying to sleep better only to end up sleeping worse because of your wearable. So without proper guidance, wearables can create anxiety instead of clarity. But that's what we're here to fix. So let's simplify things and focus on the metrics that truly matter, ones that will help you take actionable steps for your health. I'll be the first to admit that not all Venn diagrams are useful, but when thinking about wearable metrics, this next one really is. When we think about the flood of metrics wearables provide, two things matter. Is the metric important for understanding your health? And secondly, is it accurately measured by wearables? Where these two criteria overlap, we find the metrics that matter. So these are the metrics we should really focus on, the ones that give us meaningful, actionable insights to improve our health. So let's try and find them. This idea of focusing on the metrics that matter isn't just mine. Peter Tierney, he's a a leading sports scientist in Ireland and a friend of Strove, put out a message on social media to collaborate on a framework that evaluates the usefulness of various wearable metrics. The post was a hit, it went viral, and the results, was input from experts all over the world. So let's have a look at the outcome. Here's Peter's full framework for wearable metrics. And as you can see, the metrics are plotted on two axes. The vertical axis shows how important that metric is for understanding your health. And the horizontal axis shows how well current wearables can actually measure that metric. So now let's look at the color coding. So green shows metrics that are both useful and accurately measured. So this is really the sweet spot. And we are looking at metrics in the top right of this graph as being the most useful. Blue metrics are somewhat useful and accurate, but not always reliable. And then the red represents metrics that, while they might be important, they aren't really measured very well by current technology. And so a lot of wearable companies might push these metrics, but the truth is that they're not as useful as they make them out to be. So just from this graph, there's a couple of highlights I'd like to show. So atrial fibrillation detection. So that's the metric that saved Mr. Luemba in the story I began with. And it actually isn't all that accurate just yet. And so it gets a blue ranking. There's a couple of devices that do it well, and the Apple Watch is one of them, but there's many other devices that aren't just there yet. Next, we all like to brag about our sleep stages and how many hours of REM sleep we got, when the truth is that wearables are pretty terrible at being able to detect sleep stages. Yet all of the wearables will try and give us that data. And then lastly, composite scores. So these are things like stress or energy. You can find those in red here somewhere. These all rely heavily on algorithms, and they can be quite misleading, and they vary between different manufacturers as well. So Whoop's strain and readiness scores are an example of this. So yeah, composite scores are not the best. So with this framework in mind, let's focus on 6 key metrics that fall into that sweet spot. So these are metrics that are useful, actionable, and reliably measured. From Peter's framework, we've identified 6 key metrics that matter most for your health and well-being. And these metrics meet both criteria. They're important for understanding your body and health, and they're accurately measured by most modern wearables. So here they are. Resting heart rate, which is a simple but powerful indicator of fitness and recovery. Exercise heart rate. So this helps you train effectively and achieve your fitness goals. Total sleep time is a straightforward measure of how well you're recovering and what your sleep quality is like. Heart rate variability, or HRV, this reflects your body's balance between stress and recovery. Good old steps, which is a classic but essential measure of daily activity. And then lastly, VO2 max, which is one of the best predictors of cardiovascular fitness and longevity. So we're going to take a closer look at each of these and why they matter and how you can use them. So let's start with one of the simplest yet most powerful metrics, and that's resting heart rate, or RHR. So what is it? It's pretty simple. It's the number of times your heart beats per minute while you're at rest. So while you're all sitting there enjoying this webinar, what is your heart rate? Most wearables measure this automatically, typically overnight or during periods of inactivity. Why does it matter? Well, it's a key indicator of your cardiovascular fitness, and changes in your resting heart rate can signal stress, fatigue, or illness. So generally, your resting heart rate would increase during those periods, or even improvements in fitness where you would find a gradually decreasing resting heart rate. So a lower resting heart rate is usually a sign of better heart health and better efficiency from your heart. What are the targets? What should you aim for? So the healthy range for adults is, in the medical textbooks, is always quoted as 60 to 100 beats per minute. but we should really be aiming lower than that. So athletes can have, readings in the 30s. So cyclists in particular, cross-country skiers, those sorts of athletes have really low heart rates. So anything around the 50 beat per minute mark is pretty good and probably indicates good fitness. The important thing is to track long-term trends rather than obsess over daily fluctuations. So your resting heart rate is most useful as a baseline metric and, to spot changes over time. It's one of the easiest metrics to track, but it can be incredibly valuable and provide insights into your overall health. Next, we're going to look at exercise heart rate, which, as mentioned, is an incredibly useful metric for optimizing your workouts and your exercise. So unlike resting heart rate, this is measured during exercise. So it's the same metric essentially, but just measured at a different time. So this is measured during your exercise sessions. And it essentially acts as your body's rev counter. So for petrol heads, you'll know what the rev counter does. It kind of tells you how hard your body is working really, and then you can judge sort of, is that intensity right for your fitness goals. So why does it matter? Staying in the right heart rate zone ensures you're training optimally. Whether your goal is fat loss, endurance, speed, your heart rate training zones might vary according to your goals. It helps prevent undertraining, so where you're not actually working hard enough to see any results. And it also avoids overtraining, which, if you're going out and really exercising too hard every day, which can lead to fatigue, overtraining, or injury. So by linking heart rate zones to your goals, you can make every workout effective and every workout count. So what should you be aiming for? The heart rate zones are typically calculated as percentage ranges of your maximum heart rate. Most of the wearables have kind of aligned on a similar model. And you can kind of estimate your maximum heart rate with the formula 220 minus your age. But generally, your wearable will set that all up for you and give you your heart rate zones. And most wearables make it easy to then monitor those zones in real time during your workouts, and so you can adjust your effort and try hit those zones during your morning walk or morning run or whatever it is. So if you're serious about improving your fitness, tracking exercise heart rate is definitely one of the best ways to make your workouts count. Okay, let's talk about one of the simplest but most important metrics, and that's total sleep time. So pretty simple to explain. This is the total number of hours you sleep each night. So as mentioned with the sleep stages, really forget about complicated sleep stages. They're most likely inaccurate and aren't all that useful. This metric is the most reliable and straightforward measure of your recovery and your sleep. So why does it matter? As we know, sleep is essential for physical recovery, mental focus, and emotional resilience. Chronic sleep deprivation increases your risk of illness, impairs your cognitive performance, and can even affect your emotional health. And most adults should be aiming for at least 7 to 9 hours per night. A lot of people will say, I only need 5 hours per night. That's very likely not true. So most people will need at least 7 hours per night. Instead of worrying about single nights, really focus on weekly trends, and consistent patterns are far more important for understanding your sleep health. Sleep really is the foundation of health, and if there's one metric to start improving now, this is it. Okay, onto steps now. This really is one of the most common and easy to track metrics, and it's probably the one that kind of launched this whole wearable space. So, back in the day when wearables weren't really a thing, there were these little step counters that you would mount to your belt, and those gradually developed, some features were added with time. But steps have been around kind of since the beginning of this wearable movement. Pretty easy to explain steps. It's simply the number of times you put one foot in front of the other each day. And it's one of the simplest and most accessible measures of overall daily activity and movement patterns. So most wearables count steps, automatically giving you a straightforward look at how much you're moving around each day. So why does it matter? Well, we know that steps promote regular movement, reducing sedentary behavior, which is a major risk factor for chronic diseases. So even in people who are exercising regularly, if you're sitting for the rest of the day, that's still a major risk factor for disease. So don't see steps as a type of exercise. It's almost a separate metric that's showing you what your movement patterns are like outside of exercise. So increasing your step count lowers the risk of conditions like heart disease and diabetes. And beyond physical health, regular movement has mental health benefits, boosting energy levels and even improving mood. We all know about the 10,000 steps per day, yeah, I mean, the research isn't all that clear on that just yet, but a general target of around 7,000 per day is definitely adequate. But if you can get that to 10,000, that's great. If you're starting from a lower baseline, don't feel overwhelmed. Just focus on gradually increasing your step count week by week. Even small increases can have a significant impact over time. Things like parking a little bit further away from your work entrance or the shopping center entrance, or taking the stairs, those sorts of things can add up over the day and really start increasing that step count. So steps might seem basic, but they are a powerful metric for improving both your physical and mental health. And sometimes simpler is better. This one is less simple, unfortunately, so it tends to cause a bit of confusion. So heart rate variability, or HRV, is one of the most fascinating metrics that wearables can measure. So both Whoop and Oura, multi-billion-dollar companies, were built around this one metric, basically. So what is it? HRV measures the variation in time between consecutive heartbeats, and it really reflects the balance between your body's stress and recovery systems, essentially how well your body is adapting to challenges. So have a closer look at that ECG trace along on the top there. Each spike represents a heartbeat, an electrical signal from the heart, and these are called R waves. The time between these R waves, so from this one to this one, from this one to this one, is not constant. It varies. So, for example, in a well-rested state, the gaps between these spikes will vary more. Have two beats close to each other, one a little bit further, then another one closer, one much further apart, and that really reflects a high HRV, and it's a sign of flexibility in your autonomic nervous system, showing that your body is adapting well. On the other hand, when you're stressed or fatigued, those gaps become more consistent, reflecting a low HRV, and this is a sign that your body is struggling to balance stress and recovery. HRV is calculated by analyzing these variations over a given period, often during sleep or rest, when external factors are minimized. So most of the wearables are now taking that reading sort of just before you wake up in the early morning. But there is some variation across the different brands. So why does it matter? High HRV generally indicates good recovery and readiness for activity. On the flip side, low HRV can signal stress, overtraining, or even illness. A lot of people during the COVID pandemic were noticing low HRV before even showing symptoms of COVID. So it can often be an early warning sign. So tracking HRV trends over time can help guide your training and your recovery decisions, making it a valuable tool for athletes and for non-athletes as well. So where should you aim? What's a good HRV? And that's the thing about HRV. It's highly individual. So what's normal for one person may not be for another. The key is to focus on improving your personal baseline over time. That said, healthy, younger, and fitter individuals tend to have higher baseline HRV than unhealthy or unfit individuals. HRV can help you decide when to push harder or when to prioritize rest and recovery. It's important to use HRV alongside other metrics rather than just relying on it alone. You might wake up in the morning and your watch says that your HRV is pretty low, but if you feel great and you've got good motivation to train that day, you could safely go ahead and train. I wouldn't run your life based on this one metric. So HRV provides deep insights into your body's stress and recovery balance, but its real power lies in tracking trends rather than obsessing over those daily small movements. Finally, we're going to take a look at VO2 max, which is a metric that stands out for its ability to measure overall fitness. So VO2 max is a measure of how efficiently your body uses oxygen during exercise, and it's widely regarded as one of the best indicators of cardiovascular fitness, endurance, and general health as well. We used to have to measure it like in this picture with fancy and expensive equipment, but most modern wearables can now give an estimate within about 10% of the actual reading. So why? It's strongly linked to athletic performance and longevity as well. Improvements in VO2 max lead to better endurance, stamina, overall health, and even a longer life. Simply put, a higher VO2 max means your body can sustain more intense activity for longer periods. Now, I'll point out something interesting. VO2 max is the only blue indicator in our list of 6 metrics. So while the blue metrics are somewhat less reliable than the green ones, I chose to include it because it's possibly the best single number we have to assess overall health and fitness. Wearables are getting better at estimating VO2 max, especially during running and cycling, so it is becoming an invaluable metric. Where should you be aiming? VO2 max can be improved. There's a genetic component, but it can be improved, and regular aerobic and interval training does raise it. Healthy ranges vary by age and fitness level, and there's a bunch of tables that you can look up pretty easily. So the key is tracking your progress over time and using a wearable, eventually aiming for the top 5% in your age group if you can. VO2 max is a powerful metric that reflects not just your fitness, but also your long-term health potential. And it's a great example of how wearables can provide actionable insights into our bodies. Okay, we've explored the metrics that matter, but how do we turn the data into meaningful action? So let's talk about making your wearable work for you. So first, adjust your wearable settings to focus on key metrics. Simplify. If certain metrics aren't useful to you, just hide them to reduce clutter and distraction. Focus on the data that aligns with your personal health goals. Secondly, track trends over weeks, not daily fluctuations. Wearable data is most powerful when viewed over time. A single bad night of sleep or an off day doesn't mean too much, but patterns over weeks can really tell the full story. And finally, use wearable insights for actionable behavior changes. For example, if your sleep data shows poor recovery, you could try improving your bedtime routine, turning off screens earlier or establishing a consistent sleep time. So your wearable really is a tool. It's not the answer. And by focusing on what matters, you can transform it from just another gadget into a meaningful part of your health and wellness journey. So now that we know the metrics that matter, let's talk about selecting the right device to track them. This wearable ternary plot, again by our friend Peter Tierney, shows how different devices specialize in one of 3 areas: exercise, sleep, or smart tech. So smart tech being, notifications, messages, and that sort of thing, music, etc. So devices closer to a corner specialize in that area. So for example, the Polar Chest Strap is best for exercise, offering precise activity and training data. The Aura Ring, which I mentioned previously, is best for sleep. It provides advanced insights into recovery and readiness. And then the Garmin Phoenix, for example, is a versatile device that sits somewhere in the middle, but it covers all bases, but it leans a little bit towards exercise and activity. So all the brands mentioned here, Garmin, Aura, Apple, Fitbit, Whoop, Coros, all great choices for tracking metrics. However, I want to highlight one consideration, which is compatibility. Some devices from brands like Huawei and Samsung may have excellent features and be good devices, but sometimes they don't play so nicely with third-party apps like Strobe. This can limit your ability to use wearable data effectively across platforms. So when choosing a wearable, start by defining your priorities, whether that's fitness, sleep, or overall convenience, and then pick a device that supports your goals while integrating seamlessly with the tools that you plan to use. As we look to the future, wearables are becoming even more advanced and integrated into our daily lives. Here are a couple of trends that have emerged recently. AI integration, so wearables like the Friends Brain Band are using artificial intelligence to go beyond just data tracking. So, the band will optimize sleep by monitoring brain activity and then providing a real-time feedback. This kind of AI-driven intelligence makes wearables more user-centric and personalized. Health-centric design. So wearables are evolving from just fitness trackers into comprehensive health tools. So new features like non-invasive glucose monitoring is going to be amazing for pre-diabetics and diabetics, continuous blood pressure tracking. So these are all shifting the focus towards proactive health management, making the devices essential for broader well-being, not just fitness. Smart glasses. The Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses, as an example, are pretty exciting. They combine style, which is questionable. This is not the Ray-Ban one. Offering features like audio enhancement, voice assistance, language translation, built-in cameras. So there's a growing trend of wearables blending functionality with fashion. So the advancements show that wearables are no longer just accessories, but they're becoming indispensable tools for health convenience and communication even. So let's bring it all together with a quick recap. The problem, so wearable data can feel overwhelming with so many metrics and no clear guidance on what to focus on. But here's the thing, wearable data isn't going away. In fact, it's only becoming more integral to how we all manage our health. So the solution is to identify 6 key metrics. Well, we identify 6 key metrics that matter, metrics that are important for your health and accurately measured by current wearable technology. By focusing on just a few metrics, you can cut through the noise and make your wearable a powerful tool for well-being. So practical tips, choose a wearable that's suited to your needs and integrates well with your favorite apps. Adjust your settings to focus on key metrics and reduce unnecessary noise and distraction. And then track trends instead of single points of data. Patterns over time are where the real insights lie. And most importantly, act on the data. There's no point gathering all this data if it's not going to affect your behavior. Create meaningful behavior changes, whether that's improving your sleep routine, optimizing workouts, or managing stress. So start applying these tips, and you can really unlock the potential of your wearable as a life-enhancing tool. That's all I've got for now. So if there are any questions, we can go through those.
Yes, Jared, there's a question from Nyembezi, and I think Adrian asked the same question, being like, how accurate is your heart rate, like your HRV in wearable? And Adrian is like, how can I know if my wearable is giving me the correct data?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So HRV's come a long way. The accuracy was pretty poor just a few years ago, but all the major brands are trending towards pretty decent accuracy nowadays. The main thing that is different between them is kind of the time and the length of time that they actually measure that HRV for. But most of the devices are reasonably accurate now. Still, the gold standard for HRV is going to be a chest strap rather than a wrist device. But reasonable accuracy in terms of HRV. The problem comes in with these composite scores. So a lot of the companies then take your HRV and they combine it with other factors and give you this sort of composite score and say your recovery is 62 out of 100. That's not really useful because we don't really know exactly how they've calculated that value, and it's not sort of comparable across different platforms. So stick to the raw data. So just get out of your wearable what was my HRV when it was measured this morning and track that over time rather than those composite scores. And I see Adrian's asked if HRV is a value if you're not exercising or an athlete. And I'd say yes, I think it's still a decent indicator of general health. I mean, if your HRV is really very low and your baseline is very low, it might be an indication that your general health or fitness is not that great. But then also for monitoring stress and just general recovery as well, it can be a useful tool. What else do we
All
have?
right, thank you for that. Yeah, we also have Bonga who asked what is the best way to improve VO2 max?
Aha. So unfortunately, VO2 max requires some pain. You have to actually go a little bit deep and really raise the intensity to start improving VO2 max. And that's going to be cardio. It doesn't matter what cardio you choose generally, but usually,
Mm.
running and cycling are the ones that people go to. But swimming and other forms of cardio will be just as effective. The key really is getting your heart rate up to near maximum. So the classic VO2 max workout is a 4x4 workout where you will, for 4 minutes, try and maintain as high an intensity as you can for those 4 minutes, and then rest for 4 minutes, and then 4 minutes, and then rest for 4 minutes. So four of those. If you can't manage that at first, start with just 1 4-minute interval and see how you
Oh,
feel after that, and then gradually increase after that. But yeah, in order to improve VO2 max, the best way to do it is through high intensity interval training.
all
And then I see
right.
there's one from Kamal about
Yeah.
the wearable for CrossFit. So yeah, I mean, CrossFit isn't my game. I'm not too clued up there. The problem with measuring load in resistance exercise is that the wearable can't really sense, how heavy is the weight that you are picking up. They're starting to get better at sort of counting reps, but they still don't know, um, what sort of load you are pushing. So a lot of the newer wearables, I've seen it on some of the new Garmin's, will count reps, which is great. But sometimes, the watch is going to get in the way of your some of, you lifting a kettlebell. You don't want your watch on your wrist, so it is tricky. Sometimes a good old heart rate strap is going to be the best, because CrossFit, being quite a high intensity activity, will elevate the heart rate, and you will get some good gauge in terms of what the intensity of the session was like. Also, the new heart rate straps have a memory in there, so you don't have to have your phone on you or your watch on you. You can just wear the strap and then download that session after you've done your CrossFit session. But yeah, there's no perfect device just yet for CrossFit, nor for resistance training just yet. Adrian, for a newbie to all this, what one metric would you focus on? I mean, I think it really depends on your goals. So what I think is a good question, because I think focusing on one metric is a good way to start, because you're more likely to make some progress if you're really just focusing on that one metric. But which metric you choose is really going to depend on your current health, your current fitness, your goals. So I mean, of those six, maybe just reflecting on which of those is most important for me to improve in my life at the moment. It might be that you really have chronic insomnia, you're struggling with sleep, then maybe that's that one metric that you should be looking at improving. It might be that you're an athlete and you're really looking to improve your performance, then maybe VO2 max is the one you're going to be targeting. But taking a sort of just looking at one or two at a time is probably a good approach. From Dean Aronsa, best wearable in your opinion? Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's really difficult. Horses for courses. I've kind of ended up with Garmin just because I think their ecosystem is pretty good. They've got a lot of different devices that cover all bases. So, I've got a Garmin Venue on my wrist, which monitors my sort of daily activity, and if I do the occasional run. But I'm mostly a cyclist, so then I've got a Garmin cycling device, and everything goes into the same platform. So all the data is in the same platform. I used to have a Polar watch and a Garmin cycling computer, and that was frustrating because then they don't speak to each other. So it's very difficult to say, what is the best. For some people, they might want something that's very unobtrusive, and then maybe a Whoop band is the best because you can wear it all day, every day. It doesn't have a screen. It doesn't sort of irritate you with notifications or anything like that, and it maybe gives you good data on your sleep and recovery. So maybe for that person, the Whoop would be the best. So it's a difficult one to answer, but for me, I've found myself with Garmin. Did we miss any questions?
I'm seeing another one from, wait, what? Is it from Sonic?
Frix is he's using a Fitbit for CrossFit, so yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, I haven't used Fitbit myself, but yeah, I mean, most of these have accelerometers, so you will get some rep counts and that sort of thing. And if it's measuring your heart rate, that's pretty good as well. Just a note on heart rates with these wearables, a lot of them aren't as accurate as a chest strap. So chest strap is still going to be the gold standard for an accurate heart rate reading, but they are getting better. Some of them are, approaching the accuracy of a good chest strap, but there are others that are pretty woeful. So sometimes on the cheaper end of the spectrum, the heart rate is a random number generator more than anything else.
Hey, Jared, there's one last question from Sonic. Says, if my goal is to lose belly fat and gain muscle, which metrics should I look at or prioritize?
Yeah, so I mean, wearables can't measure your diet and nutrition, unfortunately. So that's where I would start when the goal is weight loss. But for things that wearables can measure, it would be exercise heart rates, because essentially you want to be sitting in zone 2, which is kind of a good zone to gain fitness, but intense enough to light up the metabolism a bit and burn some fat. So that would probably be the metric that I would be looking at. How much time per week am I spending in zone 2 heart rate? So, am I increasing that week on week? And can I get get a high load of zone 2 training? Privacy concerns, Byron. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, we all sign away our lives when we sign up to one of these platforms. There's all sorts of T's and C's, and obviously we're reassured that our privacy is protected. But yeah, data breaches are always an issue. So I think it's a personal choice, weighing up kind of the risks of data breaches versus the benefits that you get from the wearable. But yeah, I mean, those breaches will probably continue to happen. So, are there any others here?
I'm not identifying any new ones. Yeah, I think that was all the questions.
Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. We have recorded the session, and we'll publish that, and you'll all get an email as well. Did we? The webinar feedback, please. There's a form posted in the chat there. If you can just give us some feedback on whether you enjoyed the session or not, and what we might change to kind of improve things as well, that would be great. But yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jared. Bye.